And there has been consternation in the media, I think in politics as well, as to whether it's possible to hold Donald Trump accountable as a presidential candidate for the more ludicrous and preposterous things that he tends to say as a candidate. I mean, just because of the sheer number of things he has said that fit that bill, how do you hold him to account for those things? How do you make him answer for those things? I mean, it's one thing for Mitt Romney to give his one remark on how 47% of Americans are moochers and parasites, and then the media and politicians chew on that for a month after Mitt Romney gets overheard saying that. That one comment. I mean, with Donald Trump, a 47% type comment, that would be a welcome respite on a day that might more typically include berating a judge for being Latino, calling Elizabeth Warren Pocahontas, saying he'll meet with Kim Jong-un, saying Saudi Arabia should have nuclear weapons, not swearing off dropping nuclear bombs on Europe, banning all Muslims from the United States, and admitting that he learns all he needs to know about national security from the TV shows he watches when they put the generals on. I mean, when that's like a typical day on the Donald Trump campaign trail, when it's just this tide of one thing after another like that, do we get inured to it? There's starting to be some media sort of soul-searching about that. I think there's political consternation over that. When you're that ridiculous that frequently, do people stop being shocked? Do we get inured? Does nothing seem too shocking? Does nothing seem too idiotic or dangerous or blatantly racist anymore? How do you make a candidate answer for those things he throws out there when he throws so much out there? How do you make it sink in for voters that he really, truly has proposed all of this stuff? Well, today, in what was, I think, inarguably her best speech of the presidential campaign, Hillary Clinton did that to Donald Trump. And she did it the same way that President Obama handled the Trump conspiracy theorist as well today, by letting his own words speak for himself, just putting them out there, unembellished, unedited, and letting people laugh at them.
He says he doesn't have to listen to our generals or admirals, our ambassadors and other high officials, because he has, quote, a very good brain. He also said, I know more about ISIS than the generals do. Believe me. You know what? I don't believe him.
Of course, she's as serious as a heart attack as she's giving this speech, but the crowd is cheering and laughing at Donald Trump. I mean, the reason that works, both as a speech and as a lasting critique, is that she is not caricaturing Donald Trump to get that kind of reaction from that crowd. She's just quoting him directly, and that's deadly.
I know more about ISIS than the generals do, believe me.
Who are you consulting with consistently so that you're ready on day one?
I'm speaking with myself, number one, because I have a very good brain and I've said a lot of things.
This speech today was the best speech yet of Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign, in part because I think she likes pressing her case on national security issues, for one, but also because it is just rhetorically deadly to be able to take your opponent's record, not embellish it, not dress it up, not make it seem worse than it is, not round up to the nearest funny thing about it. Just take it as it is. String it together, word for word, literally. Let it speak for itself and let people respond. It's hard to do, but when it works, it is politically deadly.
This is a man who said that more countries should have nuclear weapons, including Saudi Arabia.
We're better off, frankly, if South Korea is going to start to protect itself.
Saudi Arabia, nuclear weapons?
Saudi Arabia, absolutely.
This is someone who has threatened to abandon our allies in NATO.
We don't need NATO.
Do you think? No, we don't really need NATO in its current form. NATO is obsolete.
He has said that he would order our military to carry out torture and the murder of civilians who are related to suspected terrorists, even though those are war crimes.
With the terrorists, you have to take out their families. When you get these terrorists, you have to take out their families.
And don't tell me it doesn't work. Torture works, okay, folks? Torture, you know, I have these guys. Torture doesn't work. Believe me, it works, okay?
What would you do as commander-in-chief if the U.S. military refused to carry out those orders?
They won't refuse. They're not going to refuse me. Believe me.
But they're illegal.
The Clinton campaign today, simultaneously with this speech, they released essentially an annotated guide to the speech with direct quotes from Donald Trump, proving that she wasn't making it up. She wasn't embellishing. She wasn't rounding up to the nearest thing that would make an impact. She was hoisting him on his own words. And having done that, she just let loose in a way we haven't seen her do before.
The person the Republicans have nominated for president cannot do the job. Donald Trump's ideas aren't just different, they are dangerously incoherent. They're not even really ideas, just a series of bizarre rants, personal feuds, and outright lies. He is not just unprepared. He is temperamentally unfit to hold an office that requires knowledge, stability, and immense responsibility. He praises dictators like Vladimir Putin and picks fights with our friends, including the British Prime Minister, the Mayor of London, the German Chancellor, the President of Mexico, and the Pope. He says he has foreign policy experience because he ran the Miss Universe pageant in Russia. I have to say, I don't understand Donald's bizarre fascination with dictators and strongmen who have no love for America. He praised China for the Tiananmen Square massacre. He said it showed strength. And he said if he were grading Vladimir Putin as a leader, he'd give him an A. Now, I will leave it to the psychiatrist to explain his affection for tyrants. I just wonder how anyone could be so wrong about who America's real friends are. Because it matters. If you don't know exactly who you're dealing with, men like Putin will eat your lunch. It really matters that Donald Trump says things that go against our deepest held values. It matters when he says he'll order our military to murder the families of suspected terrorists. During the raid to kill bin Laden, when every second counted, our SEALs took the time to move the women and children in the compound to safety. Donald Trump may not get it, but that's what honor looks like. I remember being in the Situation Room with President Obama debating the potential bin Laden operation. The president's advisors were divided. The intelligence was compelling but far from definitive, and the risks of failure were daunting. The stakes were significant for our battle against al-Qaeda and our relationship with Pakistan. Most of all, the lives of those brave SEALs and helicopter pilots hung in the balance. It was a decision only a president could make. And when he did, it was as crisp and courageous a display of leadership as I've ever seen. Now imagine Donald Trump sitting in the Situation Room, making life or death decisions on behalf of the United States. Imagine him deciding whether to send your spouses or children into battle. Imagine if he had not just his Twitter account at his disposal when he's angry, but America's entire arsenal. Do we want him making those calls, someone thin-skinned and quick to anger who lashes out at the smallest criticism? Do we want his finger anywhere near the button? There's no risk of people losing their lives if you blow up a golf course deal. But it doesn't work like that in world affairs. Just like being interviewed on the same episode of 60 Minutes as Putin was, is not the same thing as actually dealing with Putin. So the stakes in global statecraft are infinitely higher and more complex than in the world of luxury hotels. We all know the tools Donald Trump brings to the table: bragging, mocking, composing nasty tweets. I'm willing to bet he's writing a few right now.
Hillary Clinton today in San Diego giving what I think is the best speech yet of her campaign. And of course, to that last point, Donald Trump was actually tweeting at her at that very instance in her speech. Look what he tweeted: "Bad performance." Bad performance. If it is a performance that we're watching, then truly, I mean, all bets are off in terms of what happens, right? If it's no longer politics and it's performing arts, I don't know how to predict who wins that. But if it is a presidential race, then Hillary Clinton really did just step up her campaign significantly. And she did it by tacking him to the wall with his own unadorned statements. It's really hard to do that in politics, but she did it today over and over and over again. And that kind of an assault from a candidate is hard to rebut and hard to beat. We will see if Trump even tries.